Yo, what's up chefs, it's Vinny. POE 2 has just revealed its newest major content update, the third Edict, as well as the new league, Rise of the Abyssal. Alongside these come a plethora of massive new changes to the game that are honestly kind of redefining POE 2 as we know it. With this in mind, this video is going to show you everything you need to know about the new content updates. I've also got a Google Doc that'll be linked down in the description if you want to see all of the notes that I wrote down for every single change with timestamps for the live stream reveal. I'll include a link to the live stream down below as well. So if you want to line them up, read the document, reference the live stream, you can do that as well quite easily. But like I said, this is going to take you through everything you need to know, and there's a lot of changes, so let's get started. First things first, there is a Twitch drop that's available right now. It's going to be available until the end of August 20th, which is today, so you don't have much time to get it. If you want to, hop over to Twitch right now, watch your favorite streamer, and you can collect it. It's a finisher effect that should be usable in PoE 2 and PoE 1. Moving on from that, the first major change is that Act 4 has finally been introduced to the game, which is a massively welcome change. I know myself, as I'm sure many of you, have gotten quite bored of running Act 1 through 3 and then repeating it on the cruel difficulty. So at this point now, it's going to be Act 1 through 4, and then following that, there's going to be 3 temporary Interlude Acts, which will bridge the gap between Act 4 and the Endgame. Act 4 is going to take place on some islands out in the ocean, and it's going to be completely non-linear, meaning you can choose your own path, which island you want to go to first, which island you want to go to last, which is going to be a quite cool concept for an ARPG. A little bit of details on the Interlude Acts. Interlude 1 looks very bloody, a lot of red thematics here, kind of vampire-esque, giving off Bloodborne vibes if you're familiar with that game. Interlude 2 is going to be very sandy, a big desert. There's going to be a lot of beast enemies here, quite cool. And then Interlude 3, very different, is going to be an ice mountain biome. Supposedly, as you climb higher, the climate should get colder. Not sure exactly what that means because they didn't dive into too much detail, but you'll be able to explore a bunch of ice caves, things of this nature. Also seems quite cool. Like I said before, these are going to be temporary, so obviously they will be getting replaced, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the assets here end up getting reused in some way because they do look quite amazing. Following that, at right around the 8-minute mark, they start talking about a new mechanic coming to the game, which is sprinting, and oh my goodness, this is going to be amazing. So the way they described it is it's going to take place after a dodge roll. You can basically just keep holding space if that's your keybind for dodge roll. This is going to be available on all classes. It doesn't seem like there's a stamina bar that goes along with it. So this is just going to be an extreme improvement to the overall mobility of every character in the game throughout the entire game. You know, you can start doing it at level 1 and you'll be doing it all the way until you're done with your character on your last map or your last pinnacle boss, etc. So this is going to be amazing. And it's going to help with the overall kind of sluggish feel that a lot of people have had a problem with in PoE 2. The next major update they dived into detail on is going to be a support gem overhaul, and this is another massive one. The first major part of it is that we're now going back to the PoE 1 system, where you can now use multiple copies of the same support gems. An easy example here is for most attack builds, you'll almost guaranteed be including martial tempo as a support gem in every single one of your skills because the attack speed is just that valuable. With this new change, not only are all of the previous builds probably going to be quite a bit stronger, but there's also going to be way more build ideas that can now take place due to this change. In addition to that, there's also going to be multiple levels of support gems now, so you can upgrade them throughout your playthrough, level 1, 2, and 3 as an example, and a lot of the level 3 versions seem like they actually altered the support gem in a somewhat significant way. An example they showed was level 1 and 2 of a support gem just giving you flat cast speed, and then level 3 giving you a stacking buff every time you cast a spell within a certain time frame. Each stack is giving you more and more cast speed. So it's up to you to choose whether or not you want to go from level 2 to 3, and it's really going to depend on your build. Moving on to a more endgame focused support gem change, and that's going to be the addition of Lineage supports. These are going to be special, unique support gems that can be found in the endgame from unique bosses as an example. A lot of these will be able to be target farmed and will only drop within specific areas or from specific enemies, and these should be more rare but also significantly more impactful as well. They'll make more noticeable changes to the way your character plays, and in a lot of cases should be more beneficial to use than a regular support gem, but you're not going to get access to them until the end game. Following that, at around the 13-minute mark, they started to dive into a lot of the skill and class balance changes. There's going to be a lot of these, and almost all of them are going to be buffs. They're pretty much all aimed at improving either the effectiveness or quality of life for each of the classes. So they've taken a look at all of the classes and made tweaks to each of them, which is very nice. Like I said, almost all of these are going to be buffs. In addition to this, in some cases, there's actually going to be a lot of new skills being added as opposed to just changes, which is quite cool. First up, they talked about the Ranger, and the Ranger is getting a lot of new ice skills, which is quite cool. This is actually going to flesh out that whole Ice Ranger archetype. You're no longer going to be limited to just Ice Shot as your primary skill, which is quite nice. There's also a few improvements and updates to some of the poison skills. There's even a new spirit reservation being added called Mirage Archer, which is going to be quite similar to Mirage Archer from POE 1 if you're familiar, but with a couple of interesting changes, and it looks quite nice. In addition to that, Evasion has been massively buffed, and obviously this will take place for all of the other classes as well that make use of Evasion, but there's going to be a new mechanic here called Deflect. And what this will do is it's going to give you a chance to deflect 40% of the damage taken from a hit, so presumably that 40% will just kind of go into the void, and you won't have to worry about it. And then all of your defensive mitigations will be focused on the remaining 60% of the damage. This is going to make Energy Shield nowhere near as necessary, which I think is a very welcome change. Following that, we have some Huntress changes. They didn't go into a lot of detail here, but some of the major points that they talked about is how kind of clunky parrying and blocking felt throughout the game, especially as you got towards the end game. Some of the changes they made here is that now everything in the game except red flashing attacks from like big unique bosses is going to be blockable, and then can therefore now be parried as well. You're also going to be able to move at full speed while blocking, which is going to be a major quality of life improvement for not only Huntresses, but also Warriors or anybody that wants to make use of the active block skill. Up next, we have the Warrior, and they talked a lot about the Warrior. There's going to be a multitude of improvements to this class. A lot of the ones they showcased were focused around the Fire or Lava archetype. They're going to be adding new skills here. Perfect Strike is getting buffed. And in general, there's just going to be a lot of lava is what it looks like. In addition to that, Shield Charge has no cooldown now. A lot of the defensive skills, like the active defensive skills, like Jade Armor, Molten Armor, things of that nature, have seen major improvements. So it should be much more likely that people are actually including these in their builds, and it should actually feel good to use them as opposed to kind of meh. In addition to that, there's big totem archetype improvements, as well as improvements to the totem ascendancy. Warriors should also no longer need any accuracy whatsoever on your gear in order to hit 100% of the time at close range. I know that was an issue in previous patches. You should not need to build accuracy if you're sitting in melee range. That's kind of redundant. In addition to that, armor has also been significantly buffed alongside evasion. You're now able to reduce the damage you take from elemental hits via a multitude of passives in the passive tree, and presumably there's going to be some other ways you can do this as well, maybe via some uniques, things of that nature, which is going to be a significant improvement to armor, obviously. Next up, there was a few mercenary improvements they mentioned. Crossbows can now be reloaded while moving at full speed. This is a massive quality of life change, not only to mercenaries, but any build that wants to make use of crossbows. Outside of that, there was like one glory skill that they talked about. Didn't seem super crazy, but if you're a mercenary player, it's probably worth going and checking out. After that, they also quickly touched on elemental ailments for a moment. In general, these are just kind of getting an all around the board buff. Some examples of this is that shock and chill are now going to last 8 seconds instead of 4. And it also just seems like all of the ailments are going to be easier to apply and just all around more beneficial to try and include some of these in your build whenever possible, if not even just stacking multiple of them, which is something that we've already done before, but now it's just going to be even better. Next up, we have some witch improvements. For the witch, the melee minions have been drastically improved. They've done this to try and make them more in line with the ranged minion options, because for the most part, the ranged minion options were taking over, especially as you got to the end game. Also, now all minions will no longer require any accuracy to actually connect with their opponents, which is a massive buff and a massive quality of life buff as well. They also gave an example of a current skill that's being changed, which is going to massively improve how it's used throughout the game. Unearth. This is now not only going to resummon little, crawly boys from enemy bodies, but you can also now resummon your own minions that have died during combat. So So during boss fights, you'll no longer just have to sit around and wait for your minions to respawn. You can actually just respawn them yourself very quickly with Unearth, which is quite nice. Ray Spectre has also been significantly buffed. I put in parentheses here, get ready for Spectre to be OP. It's probably going to be OP the way they described it. The spirit cost has gone down, the power has gone up, so it's very likely that we're going to see some very strong Ray Spectre comps. They also did a brief touch on some new occult skills. They gave an example of a skill called Reap, which is going to be attached to a new staff. This is going to be like a melee skill, which seems kind of interesting. They might be moving towards some potential melee witch archetypes in the future. And finally, they've made some pretty major improvements to both of the original witch ascendancies, Blood Mage and Infernalist. In particular for Infernalist, Demon Form looks like it's going to be a much more viable option, which is quite cool, because obviously that skill is very cool and fun to look at, but very few people were actually making use of it. Following the Witch, they went into detail on some of the Monk improvements, starting off with the wind skills being improved. I'm not sure if it'll be fully viable for like a full build to be focused around wind skills, but it looks like there's going to be a lot of options to include these as more supportive skills in other builds, which is definitely a start or a step in the right direction if you ask me. There's now going to be a keystone that also allows you to be fully unarmed throughout your whole playthrough, or kind of make your build around being unarmed. It's going to allow you to act as if you're using a quarterstaff, but it's going to give you some pretty strong upsides for actually being unarmed, so this could be fully viable now. They also decided to finally give the Acolyte of Chayula Ascendancy some major love. There's massive potential improvements here from what they described. You can now proc elemental ailments from chaos damage, you can leech life from chaos damage. There's a multitude of changes to some of the Ascendancy nodes within the Ascendancy, and all around it looks like it's going to be a much stronger and honestly more cool option to choose going forward. Up next, we have the Sorceress improvements, and one major takeaway from the whole Sorceress section is that they're trying to push the Sorceress more towards being a master of all of the elements, as opposed to just honing in on one in particular, which I think is quite cool, because I think we've seen enough shock builds at this point. But one of the major ways they're doing this is actually going to have an impact for all of the classes. That is that there's no longer going to be multiple curses for each of the different elements, lightning, fire, and cold. Now there's going to be a singular curse for all of them. So this is going to be a massive, massive improvement to being able to use multiple different elements in the same build, because before, it would have been very difficult to try and slot in conductivity, flammability, and whatever the other one was, hypothermia, or whatever it was called. Trying to get all of those into your build whenever you only have so many skill gem slots to begin with was obviously pretty unfeasible, so now they're all just bundled into one single curse, which is pretty amazing. Following that, at around the 31-minute mark, they dived into the passive tree improvements, and there's going to be a lot of new improvements to the passive tree. There's way more notables per class area. There's also way more little clusters to move around through. There's going to be roughly 2 to 3 additional keystones per area of the passive tree as well. So 2 to 3 at the top, 2 to 3 at the top right, 2 to 3 at the right, and you get the idea. Up next, attribute requirements have finally been addressed, and they've been lowered by 25% across the board. Thank goodness for this. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was something like, a previous level 20 skill gem that was full strength would have required 205 strength. Now it's only going to require around 155, something like that. So it's going to be a massive improvement. Hopefully this will feel a lot better throughout the campaign as well. I'm sure many of you remember leveling up your character. You have to focus so much on getting your attributes. It's very, very annoying. So I'm glad that they finally addressed this. Up next, at right around the 34-minute mark, they started to dive into the new league, Rise of the Abyssal, which according to them is actually the first official league for POE 2, technically, which is pretty cool. This is going to feature a lot of new Abyssal enemies, necromancers, undeads, things that only attack at nighttime during the campaign, which is very cool thematically if you ask me. It's going to be a lot of green thematics here. All in all, it looks pretty amazing so far. To give a small breakdown of kind of the actual league mechanic though, of course you're going to be introduced to it throughout the campaign, and it'll be, it'll take a much larger part in the end game of course, but they're going to be these abyssal fissures, or as they were calling them, just kind of pits that you'll stumble across. They're going to be spitting out these green monsters which are affected by the abyss, making them stronger. As you kill enemies around them, the monster mods will actually get sucked into the pit, and then they'll get spit back out, and they'll be like abyssalized, so to speak. So they're going to be changed in some way, making the enemies stronger. And it's kind of this, revolving door, so to speak, where you kill enemies, they go into the pit, enemies come out of the pit, they're stronger, and eventually you will close the pit, and it'll have like a big, I can't remember the name, but it was like an Abyssal Trove, that's what it was. There'll be an Abyssal Trove, which ends it off, giving you a nice chest to get some extra loot. In addition, this can actually interact with other League mechanics as well. So if you kill a Rogue Exile near it, as an example, the Rogue Exile will go into the pit, and then he'll get spit out as a Lichborn Exile, which sounds pretty cool. And it looks like these pits will be able to interact with all of the other League mechanics as well. Some of the examples they gave is end of map bosses. If you kill a boss near a pit, it'll spawn a giant, massive larva monster thing, which obviously is going to give you more loot. Do essences near the pit, it'll have some interaction with the pit as well. All of this seems very cool. I kind of like the fact that you can use this new League mechanic and it's going to enhance other League mechanics as well. So you can create like a big smorgasbord in your map of just a bunch of things happening at once, which I think people are going to really enjoy. In addition to the pit mechanic, sometimes you're going to be able to find these ancient bones, which are going to be quite rare, but they're going to be kind of a new crafting mechanic added to the game. Once you find them, you can imbue your weapons and armor with these. This will provide a hidden bonus for you at first, which is going to be like a green modifier that you can't read. It's going to be in like a different language. You can then take the item to a new area that's introduced in Act 2 called the Well of Souls. Once there, you throw the item in the pit. It allows you to reveal the modifier, and you actually get to choose from 3 different options. So it's not nearly as random as just like any modifier. You actually have some agency here in what you end up choosing, which is very, very nice. I think having a little bit more agency when it comes to crafting in PoE is definitely something I would be a fan of. During the campaign, the mods you can get from these imbuements are going to be just from the normal mod pool, nothing super unique. But once you get to the end game and deeper into the end game, you can actually start getting some pretty crazy, unique Abyssal mod effects, which are going to be much more impactful. One example they gave is you could get a mod that allows you to have more ballistas when you're playing the Mercenary. Things of this nature. Seems like it's going to be very, very cool and make for some very expensive rare items. You'll also be able to get ancient bones that are specific for waystones. You're able to imbue your waystones, aka your maps. You can then throw them in the Well of Souls, which gives you a 7th modifier on the waystone, or potentially a 7th modifier if you so choose. And these modifiers look like they're going to be more unique related to the abyssal mechanic. One example they gave is adding 9 abyssal pits to your map, which seems absolutely insane. And all in all, this looks like a great way to further juice your maps once you've kind of gone past just regular 6 mod maps. Moving on, at around the 44-minute mark, they started to talk about new maps. There's going to be a plethora of new maps here. I'm not going to go into detail on all of them, but they look kind of story-driven in a sense. Like, one of them is taking place in a town, and you're kind of like ridding the town of evil, and then you're ending it by killing a specific boss, which is like this Lich Wraith dude with scythes. There's some other examples they gave as well, like an island where you're finishing it off by fighting this like big goblin boss who's been like, taking all the loot and stuff. Seems kind of cool. I just hope the layouts actually end up being good. If we could have a mixture of good layouts with good thematics and good design, I'll be super duper happy. After that, at the 45-minute mark, they started to talk about new Atlas mechanics. There's quite a bit of changes coming to the Atlas, which I think a lot of people are going to be excited for. One of them is going to be new random encounters within the different biomes on the map. So this is going to be kind of similar to the unique maps that already exist, but obviously it's going to be a different thing. These are going to be more like citadels in essence, or like mini pinnacle bosses. This is going to help bridge the gap between the beginning of the end game and actually getting to fight those pinnacle bosses. So you're going to have more to do in between just, getting to 65, and then there's going to be more to do in between 65 and like fighting your first Zesht, for example, which I think is definitely a good change. Typically, in order to unlock these, you'll need to run the adjacent maps. This will give you some sort of key, or it's going to like take you on a little quest to unlock that special map. And then once you have that, you can go in and do it. Like I said before, a lot of these look like they're just going to be boss fights, but some of them look like they will be a bit different. Up next, map modifiers are getting changed to be more like they were in PoE 1, where every map modifier you add is going to make the map more difficult and more rewarding, as opposed to the way it is now, where it's basically just every prefix is a good thing and every suffix is a bad thing. Now, each and every mod is going to not only increase the rarity, quantity, and number of monsters, but it's also going to make the map more difficult in some way. With this in mind, each of the modifiers has kind of had their difficulty toned down, so it's not going to be like it's not going to be like you have 6 of what the suffixes are now. It's going to be more like you have 6 of what the suffixes are now, but they're each at half power. So I think this is quite good. Following that, they went into detail on a lot of improvements that are coming to the currently existing league mechanics. For example, you're now going to be able to get your first 2 league-specific Atlas points for free. Kind of like for free, it's not actually for free, but they're going to be very, very easy to get. The example they gave is for the Simulacrum points. You know, instead of having to actually do a Simulacrum, all you have to do is encounter and kill one of like the Simulacrum mini bosses within one of your maps. And that's going to give you your first 2 points for free. Up next, they didn't go into much detail on this, but apparently Uber Arbiter is getting added to the game. As long as I heard everything correctly, it seems like now there's still going to be 3 keys required to do regular Arbiter, and then there's going to be 3 enhanced keys which will be required to fight the Uber Arbiter. Endgame leveling has also been smoothed out significantly, which is supposed to make it quite easier to get to the mid-90s, so roughly 94, 95, 96 should be a lot more achievable than it is currently. Up next, there's going to be new unique items. It doesn't look like there's going to be as many, or at least they didn't tease nearly as many unique items as they did back in the Dawn of the Hunt update, but it looks like there is still going to be a plethora of new unique items to come. One of the examples they gave is something that's going to build out on that unarmed monk archetype, which definitely seems really cool. I'm definitely a fan of the fact that they're recognizing these kind of like very unique and niche archetypes, and they're trying to give players more ways to actually build into them. I think it's very, very smart of the developers to do this. Starting at around the 53-minute mark, they dived into a lot of changes that are coming to endgame crafting. Starting off with essences. Essences are getting pretty much a major overhaul. It looks like they're going to be way more useful going forward. Baseline essences are now going to act like a regal, so you're going to go from magic to a rare item, and instead of it being a random stat like it is now, it's going to be a specific stat. So currently, if you used an Essence of the Flames, it would give you a random fire modifier. Now, supposedly, there's going to be individual essences for every single fire modifier, and you would just choose which one you want. So if you still need flat fire damage on your weapon for whatever reason, you can get that specific essence and then add it that way. In addition to that, there's supposed to be more tiers of essences, and the tier of essence you use is going to determine the minimum affix tier that gets applied for that new modifier. So a higher tier essence means you're going to get a higher tier of flat fire damage, for example, if that's the essence you choose, which is super, super nice if you ask me. I mean, currently everyone already knows it. It's kind of a meme. Crafting is very RNG in PoE 2. Changes like this are actually going to make a big difference. It's also going to be a whole new type of essence that acts as a chaos orb effectively. Similar to the previous one though, it's not going to be a random stat. It's going to be a specific stat based on the essence, but it will remove a random stat. So when you use it on a rare item, it's going to remove one of the modifiers randomly, and then it's going to replace it with a specific modifier of your choosing, which is quite nice. This is just like a super juiced up chaos orb, obviously. Welcome change if you ask me. And similar to the essences, there's going to be higher tiers of all of the other crafting materials as well, such as transmutes, exalts, chaos, augments, etc. So a quick example here is if you have an exalt and you have the highest tier of it, whatever modifier gets added at random to the rare item is going to be a high minimum affix tier. So, you don't have to worry about slamming an exalt on an end game really juiced up item and then getting like tier 1 life. Instead, if it were to roll life, you'd get like tier 7 life, or you'd get a high level tier, which is going to be amazing. This is going to allow people to create some insanely godly items much easier than before. There's going to be a lot less RNG involved, but obviously you might have to shell out some extra cash for these higher tier crafting materials. But it's also going to be cool, I think, as you get to the end game. I don't know what the drop rates are going to be, obviously, but there'll be like a difference between getting a regular exalted and getting like the highest tier of an exalted orb. Like the highest tier of Exalted Ore might be worth 15 of the original Exalted Ore. Hard to say for sure. And last but certainly not least, there is going to be a new trade system. That's right, a new trade system, which is going to allow you to trade with players that are offline or AFK, doesn't matter. Oh my goodness, this is just so amazing. You know, me coming from playing WoW growing up to POE and having to do, having an auction house in World of Warcraft for the last God knows how long, to having to do this really tedious player-to-player interaction trading. I mean, this is just a dream come true. At this point, to give you the short and sweet of it, there's going to be a new NPC that's added to the game. You can bring this NPC to your hideout, and this NPC is going to have their own special stash tabs called merchant tabs. And these are going to function very similar to premium tabs from before, where you'd be selling items. You put the item in the tab, you give it a price, it goes to the trade site. But instead of it being like before, where they click a button and whisper you and they have to come to your hideout, etc., all they do is click a button. It's going to immediately teleport them to your hideout. They just have to walk up to the vendor, click on the vendor or the NPC. It's going to open up the stash tab. And at that point, they can then buy the item they want, and they can also view the other items that you have for sale as well. And any of these items, they can just buy immediately. Right there, you don't have to be present, you don't have to be online. You could be doing a map, you could be doing a boss, it doesn't matter. They buy the item, the currency that they use to buy the item goes into the NPC, and then when you come back home to hideout, you can just walk up to the NPC and you can collect your loot. I mean, I don't know. This is obviously, for me at least, this is obviously the biggest change to the game coming with this content update. And I mean, I just couldn't be more happy. I'm a massive Trade League player, so this is just so unbelievably amazing. The NPC is going to be introduced to you in Act 4 in King's March. And yeah, I mean, it's just going to be crazy. I will also add that there is going to be a gold fee for trades that are done this way, but it didn't look like it was too much, so it doesn't look like it's going to be too restrictive. Ultimately, if this is the way you want to trade, you should be able to do it all the time. You shouldn't have to go back and forth while you wait for gold. And also, for any premium tabs that you purchased before this content update comes out on the 29th, you will have the option to transition them into merchant tabs. So to clarify, after the update comes out, you'll be able to buy merchant tabs for real money individually, and you can use those at the NPC. But any premium tabs that you bought before then, you have the option to go to their website and you can change them to a merchant tab. So if you've got 15 premium tabs and 8 of them are meant for selling items, you could just convert those 8 to merchant tabs and you don't have to buy any merchant tabs. Obviously a good idea for them to do this, because obviously people would have been pretty upset if they just had to rebuy merchant tabs after they had already bought premium tabs to sell their items. So good looks, GGG for this one. And then finally, not really a major change to the game, but there are going to be 2 new supporter packs available for purchase. They're going to be filled with exclusive microtransactions, the usual stuff. One of them's kind of angelic themed, and the other one's kind of health themed. If either of those fit your fancy, of course, you can head on over, pick those up. But other than that, that is going to take care of everything you need to know coming to the game in the new content update. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like I said before, if you want to take a look at this Google document, you can find it down in the description. Also, the live stream will be linked in the description, so make sure to check those out, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Later, chefs.